Welcome to the Ultimate Guide to Student Mental Health series. My name is Christina Broderick, and I'm the CEO and founder of Ignite EDU, where it's our vision that every student is able to learn, build, and strengthen their mental health foundation along their educational journey. In this series, we're talking about student mental health in differing areas, and today we're focusing on student mental health from the student's perspective. So today we have here Nelson Thomas, who's going to talk to us about student mental health from his experience and things that he's been doing to really make a change. So go ahead and introduce yourself before we get started.
Well, thank you so much for having me on here. That was a great intro.
Thanks.
Yeah, that was fantastic. So my name is Nelson Thomas. I a recent graduate of the University of New Hampshire, co-founder of ecoText, which is a company focused on creating increased opportunity through affordability by really democratizing the process and the ability for students to obtain the curriculums and the literatures they need to be the best they can be, no matter where the classroom may be. So co-founded that alongside some superstars when I was at the University of New Hampshire, and we're excited about the growth and the opportunities that are being presented here as we're really moving into a changing world of academia and the opportunity to really bring a lot of value to students across the country. So really that being the main focus, main goal of our company, really a mission-focused brand here.
I can't wait until the end we get to hear a little bit more about the progress you guys have been making and then ways that people can support you guys.
Yeah, for sure.
So before we dive into what's happening now with students and their mental health, talk to us about your experience, right? So what was it like for you growing up? What was it like for you in schools with mental health? What are some things that you experienced, things that you saw, just going from there?
I really, kind of becoming a mental health advocate through my experiences as a student athlete. I had the opportunity to play football at the University of New Hampshire, which was a great experience, met so many great people along the way, and I really had a lot of fun doing it. But, as you go up in different levels of athletics, it becomes more and more trying for you as you're going along, just the ebbs and flows of the game that become natural. So, through that's really what started me really getting to understand, okay, what can I do to take care of myself when I'm not on the field or, when I'm dealing with these ebbs and flows that are natural with the game? How can I put myself in a prime position to best take care of myself ultimately? And I really lean back on this phrase, cultivating a toolbox of sorts. Like what things can I lean back on moments of stress and anxiety or uncertainty to give myself the ease of mind and just a momentary joy, whether in that period. And then you build those up brick by brick, and then all of a sudden now you're kind of past that momentary time in your life where then you feel better about what's happening. But so really just understanding and doing that self-development work has been so important to me. Really just getting to know yourself and getting to know what you enjoy, what makes you happy. So then, when you're in those moments, you know how to pull yourself out.
Yeah. And it's hard, right? It's hard if you are, especially if you're like super young, right? So like elementary school, middle school, right? We've been playing sports our whole lives. I don't play as much anymore, but that's a different story. But even when you're younger, right, of trying to figure out what that's like for you, right? And feeling like you have to do that yourself, right? Like you don't have... Maybe you can always turn to your parents, right? It's not really talked about so much in school, which is a huge issue, which is why I do the work that I do. But I remember even me being a student athlete, like when I was younger, and having to face those kinds of like insecurities and like really getting caught in your head in high pressure moments, right? And then if you falter, something happens, like you just get yelled at.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
What's wrong with you, right? And then again, it's left up to you to figure it out, but. I want you to go like back, right? So like thinking for you in like elementary school, middle school, what did mental health look like for you in that spaces or with like your peers and support and services and stuff like that? Yeah.
I remember going back to that realm. I don't know if I really had the label for it at the time, about, okay, this is mental health, this is mental health advocacy, this is me taking care of myself in that capacity. I just remember having an urge, I guess, when in moments of frustration and sadness to be able to reach out and speak to people, right? And understanding at the time I didn't have a label, right? So it was like my support system. It was my parents, it was maybe my close friends, some of my friends that I'm still great friends with to this day.
Your older cousins.
My older cousins, exactly. People who I know I can trust and have my back to be able to speak to about whatever it is. And I know that's to this day, being now 23 years old, that's always helped me is being able to speak to people, having outlets support and trusting within the support system is something that I think is critical because then you're able to speak to people who have your back, who love you, who you can trust, and you can speak open and honestly about that. So I think even going really far back, that's where it really started for me is identifying that what kind of things are able to help me out, to help me
Yeah.
get through situations, and what kind of tactics can I lean on. And one of those things for me is really leaning on the support system and having people that really love and that I could trust to speak openly and honest about maybe what I'm going through. And that's something that's been pretty consistent.
And that's I think it's such a key part of student mental health is when you're young is having that and feeling that you really can turn to those people. In this series, we'll talk about student mental health in the home, and we talk about how for parents, right, how can they become that person for their child?
Yeah.
But it's not always easy, right? Like my mom, I knew I probably could, but I never did.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, she was busy working, single mother, like, on and out. I got other things to worry about. Like, and no fault to her, because it was true, right? Like, she was busy trying to feed 3 mouths.
Yeah, exactly.
So I remember, I don't even think I had in elementary school or middle school a counselor or social worker, anybody.
Yeah.
And I remember having moments where I wanted someone to turn to. You don't know something. You're kind of feeling like, oh, I feel like I've just been so down. I feel like I'm in this funk. What is this? But where do you go? Especially back, when I was younger, we didn't have the internet like we do now.
Yeah.
We didn't have, my mom had encyclopedias in the basement, but like, what am I looking up, right? Did you have that with like any of your peers, or did you notice any of your peers, even like high school, like struggling, or did you witness that in terms of your educational experience?
No, I mean, in terms of people struggling and stuff, I've had friends of mine who passed from suicide, unfortunately, and that was, really came out of the blue and was very abrupt the way it kind of happened. And it just goes back to speak to the resources that are needed at such a young age, and the resources that should be placed in terms of establishing a system in these, especially these early developmental years, about what toolboxes, what skill sets can we apply to these students as they're becoming next generational leaders. And I think, maybe when me and you were in middle school, it just wasn't as much of a conversation, unfortunately, right? It was kind of like a thing that it wasn't really spoken about as openly, mental health, and having these labels for it and having these understandings so we can, have names to attribute to these things so we can actually do the diligent work to fix them and eradicate them. And I think, as we're going along, and I was fortunate enough to go to pretty nice schools and stuff that had counseling services and put a little bit more of a precedent on it. So that was kind of my first introduction. But, in the grand scheme and generally speaking, I think it really goes back to placing resources there that students can really take advantage of, so they can, live up to their full potential and be able to feel open and honest about talking about these things. And if it's not necessarily somebody who's a skilled professional at it, it could be a friend, it could be, somebody who's maybe a mentor, or a teacher or something. I think people always need to be made alert of the different signs and signals that might be might be resulting in a kid who's isolating themselves or somebody who's going through something. And
the importance of being proactive, because even if sometimes those resources are there, they're reserved for when you already have a problem. Then you can go see somebody, and then that's when you start learning about all this kind of stuff, right? But then it's like, well, why aren't we just doing this more proactively? This past week, so I run a student mental health course, so I work directly with students, and we talk about mental health, and we go through different things like mindset, resiliency, stress reduction, self-care, and we also talk about support and what support looks like, right? Destigmatizing therapy and resources on campus. But time and time again, I just hear students being so frustrated with the resources that are available, right? So then it's like, how do we help students hold their schools accountable? Because the resources that may be there are subpar, right? Or they were telling me that there's long wait times, or they can't get frequent services, or when they go and speak to somebody, they feel like they're being rushed, or they're getting treatment recommendations that are given to everybody no matter what, and they're like, well, why are you giving me, my friend, the same type of medication or same type of plan or whatever? Like, they're not really individualizing it. So it's definitely complex, and it's really heartbreaking, because I think when students, it's very powerful to say, I need help, right? To make the decision that says, I need help. But then to go into spaces that are meant for students to get that help, and then they're not good, they're not great, right? And it's complex, right? It's a whole thing, layered issue of the amount of, people are available, et cetera, et cetera. But it's a hard spot, it's a hard spot to have to listen to students that are just like, please, can we do better?
They made the big jump to want to be, and brave jump,
right?
To say, hey, I need help, I need to seek the service. And that's saddening to hear, because therapy has been something that helped me so much, working through different things. But just learning about Nelson and building that emotional intelligence, which is so critical in every aspect of what you do, whether it be a relationship, business, personal endeavors, whatever the case is. Having emotional intelligence is such a skill that needs to be cultivated. So you control your emotions. Your emotions aren't in control of you. And so it's a little saddening to hear kind of those sentiments that you shared. And it is a layered and complex issue from a systemic understanding of like, okay, what's the best way we can treat so many students. I would say this: if you do have the opportunity, though, to ever be in a therapy session, it's important to understand and understand that this person is here to help you, and to be as honest about whatever you're going through with them, because it's like any doctor, right? They can only treat what you tell them. If you're not giving them, the information to your symptoms, they can't prescribe you the best medication in that perspective, right? So it's important to always just be so transparent and honest with this individual, because they're there objectively. They don't know the person you might be talking about. They don't know the situation. They really don't even really know you. They're just there to identify what's the best way to help you. And the only way for them to really truly help you on an individual, personalized level is if you're being totally transparent about what you're going through, and not letting sometimes what the ego may be come up and creep up and block you from wanting to share certain things.
It's hard. My first therapist years ago it was that, I got there and she was just like, just talk. And I was like, and I remember I was lying.
Like about what?
I was making stuff up. And I was like, this does not feel right. I think it's probably a signal that I probably, I just didn't get I didn't like the vibe from her, right? So I think it's also part of it is this recognition that everybody is not going to be the perfect person for you, right? Sometimes you might have to do a little bit of shopping. Sometimes you have to, but how do we then also with students, which is like another layer, is that advocacy, right? Self-advocacy and saying, this is not the relationship for me, but it's okay. I can go find somebody else.
Exactly.
It's difficult.
It is,
It's difficult. But I wanted to also chat about if you can go deeper for the transition for you in terms of how you got really into mental health, and then some of the things that you also do on campus. You did a lot of different initiatives as a student as it relates to mental health.
So, I mean, I got really deep into it because it was just a feeling of, I was going through what I was going through. And I remember, from that football situation that was happening. And just that, again, I really had to do with the ebbs and flows. You come in, you're playing high school ball, you go to D1 ball, you're not playing as much, right? You don't have the same burn, it's kind of be frustrating. And especially when something that you've cultivated such an identity around, it's almost such a disruption for that identity to almost be taken away in that way. You know what I mean? So that was hard for me to deal with. But then as I went to therapy and started seeing the effects of it, and started seeing the benefits of it, and started making myself feel better in those moments, started seeing the strength in that emotional intelligence I was garnering, I said, I can't be the only person going through this as a student athlete. Right. I can't. I'm not the only student athlete on campus who's like feeling bummed out or sad or depressed or anxiety or have anxious feelings and such. So that really just motivated me to want to start in my position where I had a student athlete advisory committee. That made me want to start the event I had, which was Bench Out the Stigma, which is still going on. They're doing a great job with it. Hopefully they push it on next year. And,
I was really, like bench, like actual benching.
Well, that's part of it. Really, it's just, and part of it is the award giving, the bench pressing, the kind of athletic aspect.
So it's like a competition, like how to explain that?
You're right. So Bench Out the Stigma was an event that was founded on University of New Hampshire, where really was focused on destigmatizing mental health by normalizing the conversation, just having a bunch of people who are these jocks, these people that like you see as these strong figures, in one room talking positively about the importance of mental health and having normalized conversation about the ebbs and flows that if you're in your athletic life or in your life in general, because at the end of the day, although we play sports, we are people too.
Exactly.
We're just normal human beings at the end of the day.
Sounds like a good conversation.
Sorry?
Sounds like a good conversation.
Oh, it was great, man. Yeah, I mean, it would have like last year we had like tons of like 300 plus people in the room and stuff like. Yeah, it was great. It was awesome, and it just really signified and showed power in symbolically to other athletes, even if they weren't in the room, or the greater community at large, and the greater athletic community of the NCAA and all that kind of stuff that, at the end of the day, athletes are human beings too. We have emotions, we have feelings. We're not robots, we're not items, we're not commodities, we're not just assets to coaches. It's something that, is important, and you need to treat us like human beings and understand that it's okay to not be okay. It's okay to have those kind of feelings before games, for practices, through competitions, etc. And you'll have outlets here to be able to help you get through it, because not only will going through that and seeking the proper help make you a better athlete. It'll make you a better person. It'll make you a better you at the end of the day too. And so really that was the main focus of the event.
Right.
The other aspects that we kind of made it fun because we are athletes at the end of the day too. We had like bench pressing competition for most reps, most impressive lift. Is somebody?
What's like the most reps someone did?
Oh man, somebody went under the bar. I think a football player one time. We did like 135, and one of the football guys went underneath there and benched it like 50 plus times. Yeah, and then the girl we had.
That's literally benching me.
Yeah. Like, one of these big, these are some big gritty linemen now, getting under there and getting after it. And then we had some of the young ladies as well who were in the athletic. I think one of them, blew. I think we did like 10. We did 115 for the female rounds and stuff, and somebody did that like 80 plus times or something.
What?
Like we had some really impressive athlete numbers. I was like, dang, I got to pump these numbers up a little bit.
I have zero arm strength. Yeah. I'd be on this. You got it. Yeah. I keep going.
They would kill it, man. And then
awesome.
And then we would do like gift cards and stuff. And last year was going to be sponsored by Buffalo Wild Wings and things. So we were giving out like gift cards to the first year we gave out gift cards to like Lululemon, Nike, and all that kind of stuff. So
cool.
All in all, just more importantly than anything. I wanted to serve just as a symbol, a beacon in, if anything, the UNH community, that your mental health is important, your mental health matters, and at the end of the day, you have a safe space to be able to communicate that. This normalized conversation. It's not something that you're going to be benched over or stigmatized around or felt less than because you came out and said, hey, I need help.
Right. And it speaks to how important it is for not just for students to be aware, but then also the administrators, right?
Coaches.
If you make it a priority, it's going to be a priority, right?
Exactly.
So I want you to talk about a space that has been, I think, challenging for many students given the global pandemic of ending your senior year. You didn't get a chance to walk across the stage you worked so hard for, and then that transition and the abrupt changing of just your life. A lot of studies are coming out that 85% of students have mental health has been drastically affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. Heightened awareness, heightened stress, heightened anxiety, grief, feeling of loss. So how was that for you and your peers going through this as a student?
Graduating Zoom U. That's what everybody, graduating Zoom U. It was wild. It was weird more than anything. And it was like, so anticlimactic. It was so it was difficult to do. I mean, the part of the reason I stayed up in New Hampshire, I had my off-campus apartment. I stayed there all through July. Mainly because I was like, well, shoot. I mean, when college is over, it's over, and I want to soak up everything left I got in this experience. So it's definitely an unfortunate thing and very hard to deal with because you kind of work looking forward to that graduation day, looking forward to family coming up. And, I went to everybody else's grad. I'm like the last one to graduate too out of everybody. And it was so in that way, it's just kind of one of those things that it just sucks, and there's really nothing you can do about it. It just like sucks, and really just in that way. Focusing and going back to this a little bit is focusing on what you can control. I can't control that. It's part of course. It's part of life, and ultimately we're all kind of in the same boat, dealing with COVID in many different ways, and having perspective too. Because although in those moments, I was so bummed out about the fact I didn't graduate and that I had to look at a computer screen and see my president just acknowledge the fact that today would have been a nice day, if not for COVID. But at the end of the day, too, there's people who have lost very close loved ones, people who lost mothers, daughters, aunts, brothers, et cetera. And, and I'm fortunate enough to say I graduated from college. I'm fortunate enough to say I'm doing something in ecoText and building up a company. And I'm fortunate enough to say I have a home to go back to. Then nobody in my house is sick or anything like that. So also, although in the moment, it can be like, dang, this is terrible. But trying to hold on to the level of perspective, too, as well about how bad your situation is and that it could always be worse.
That's while we recognize that it's hard to do, right? We also can recognize that there are alternatives, right, to kind of help pull us out of that space. So one thing we also talk about in this series is the difference with mental health and boys/men. Because it's just very interesting how it's just something that men just don't really talk about, don't attend to, right? And we can talk a little bit maybe about like toxic masculinity. But even when I do my course, right, out of the 40 plus past and current students, there's been one boy, one male. I've spoken to directors who sign students up, and when I do professional development and I kind of talk about this stuff, they're like, you're right. Even for us, like when we think of who to enroll, their brains go to girls, right? They're like, we don't even, and it's like how ingrained that bias is sometimes, right? So have you noticed as a young man, what that has been like for you growing up? Did you experience or hear certain things that were said about like, being a man and not fear, don't being in touch with your emotions and having to like break that down? Like, what was that like?
Man, I played football, Chris.
Other things yelled on the football
you know
field,
what I'm saying? Like, talk about a sport. I mean, I don't think there is a sport that's more hyper masculine than football, American football. And to kind of touch on that point of toxic masculinity, there was this notion, this kind of barrier put up that you have to deal and bear alone certain pressures and things as that's just part of being a man. That's part of being an adult,
right?
And it's your responsibility to kind of deal with that and not burden other people. You're supposed to be the one out there doing the work, doing the goods, and not focused on necessarily how you feel. I mean, who cares how you feel about it? What I mean? So those things, especially, I mean, when you look at football, are always communicated, by nature of the game. I mean, by nature of the game is hyper competitive, hyper masculine. It's just hyper violent and physical. And
you've been playing since you were what?
I've been playing since I was 10 years old. So I was 10 years old when I started. But it's in that way it's changing. But it's relieving when you kind of step away a little bit and are able to shed those kind of social constructs. Because at the end of the day, they're really social constructs, right? Like, who made that up?
Right.
I mean, that was kind of just built over time to become a social truth. But at the end of the day, no one necessarily, it's not stamped in any documentation that a man can't go to therapy, a man can't be a mental health advocate, a man can't take care of themselves emotionally or even physically. Like, come on, go get your toes done, bro. Like, get your nails done. Take care of yourself. Wash your face. Take a bath.
My boyfriend for a pedicure.
You know what I mean?
Come on, get a pedicure.
Come on, like, do things that make you feel good. Why would you, in general, like, why would you hinder yourself from doing something that make you feel good? Why? Because it's not quote unquote for you or quote unquote for what
it's
men,
feminine,
what men do, or
it's
feminine. Come on, man. I mean, I think one of the things is you want to exude confidence. That's manly, right? That's masculine. And at the end of the day, it's a short life. You got to do what makes you happy, what things you find joy in doing, and kind of shed these kind of necessarily these pressures and societal constructs and social constructs that are really, when you boil it all down, it's kind of made up. Yeah. It's kind of fabricated. It's just kind of there, and we've just come to accept it as truth. But when you shed yourself from necessarily putting all that burden on yourself for having to be this overarchingly quote unquote masculine figure, you find that it's just such a relief. Yeah.
And sometimes how there's like this weird, I don't know if it's like a duality or just like how it contradicts itself. Maybe that's probably better. Do you know Brene Brown? She's a shame and like vulnerability researcher. She has a really good like episode on Netflix. Okay. She has a podcast, books, all this kind of stuff. She's really amazing. And she, again, talks about shame and vulnerability. Okay. And she just kind of talks about how with men, we want them to be courageous and strong and brave. Yeah. But is that not what being vulnerable is? Right? Exactly. It's scary, but it takes a level of being brave to be vulnerable, right? So how are we not then also encouraging men to be vulnerable if we're going to tell them that they should be brave and strong, right? Are those things are not synonymous? So I do think it's an interesting perspective, as you're kind of mentioning too, that it's this social contract, and I think people just kind of moved it into the space that makes it seem acceptable for them and what they feel comfortable in, and then continue to pass that along into some stuff. But you did hint on that things are changing, right? Especially when it comes to like sports. So what are you noticing that's changing?
Yeah, no, I think you hit on a really good point there about just the way you look at it too. Yeah. Because when that is vulnerable. Being vulnerable is being brave because you're making an opportunity for somebody to hurt you.
Yeah.
So you have to be brave to kind of let your guard down that way. So again, it's kind of changing the way we speak about it and the way we look at what is bravery, what is career, being a quote unquote man, what is being, and whatever these kind of stereotypes or constructs may be. It's kind of like, let's change the conversation around those and really look at them from a different lens. But regarding to what I'm seeing changing in mental health is just you're starting to see so many popular figures, so many powerful figures embody it, and that's so important. When you're looking at somebody, consubstantiality, when somebody's able to look at somebody else and see themselves in that person, they also believe that they can do it as well. So when you have an athlete like Kevin Love, when you have an athlete like even LeBron James of the world and others, and I think what's the woman who was on USA Soccer as well? Shoot, I can't remember her name. Dang. We'll have to get that. We'll have to get her name somewhere somehow. But you have these figures who are talking so powerfully about mental health that are in such a great position where, they don't necessarily even have to do that, but they're acknowledging that, hey, even I, who am I at the elite of the elite, I'm on the USA national women's soccer team, won a gold medal. I won an NBA Finals championship. I won a Super Bowl. And I'm acknowledging that, like, hey, I went through this stuff. I go through this stuff day in, day out all the time. Really begins to normalize the conversation because these are people who little kids, little young men and young women are looking up to and aspiring to be like. And they maybe already thought because of, going through playing football since 10 years old, thinking, okay, I got to suck it up. I got to be the dude. I got to be hard, all this kind of stuff. But you see somebody else is saying like, look, I've reached the NFL. I've reached the pinnacle, what you maybe see as the pinnacle. And I go through these things too, and this is how I'm dealing with them, is a really powerful construct when you think about people who really look up to those figures. So having that conversation be normalized on that scale from these high figures who are reaching these elite levels in athletics or these elite levels just in life, in general, even if it's an actor, a CEO, a chef, or whatever the case may be, creates just a powerful example for people who are following in their footsteps who want to also aspire to be in those same positions.
And then even if we're bringing it back down to kind of like more of the micro level of even when in education, the staff, right? The students are interacting with. When I talk with my students, meet with my students, I have gotten used to a certain level of vulnerability. I talk openly about my therapy appointments, right? I talk openly about my anxiety that I face. A lot of it resonates with students when I'm like, my perfectionism and you see the highlight reel, you see all like, oh my God, Christina's doing all this stuff. She's so inspiring. She's so great. There is so much behind the scenes that is happening that you don't get a chance to see. So how can I make sure that I am letting them know that with my words, right? With my voice saying, you may see the highlight reel and you see me leaving my job and you see all this stuff, but there's these things that are happening behind the scenes. That's also important, right? And that's a way to connect and build those relationships with students where you can see it now from your athletes or things that you admire, but then also when you're in your school building, right? How are we modeling for students taking mental health days? How are we modeling for students the importance of talking about mental health and calling it mental health, right? Not just like wellness. No, we're going to talk about it and name it, right? We're going to name anxiety. We're going to name depression. We're going to name a sleeping disorder. We're going to name these things, right? Because that is all part of that normalizing and destigmatization as it relates to mental health.
And there's such power in speaking your truth too. There's such power in like just speaking openly and candidly about what you're going through, how you're doing it, and what you've been dealing with, because that no one can really take that away from you. Now it's there. No one can use that against you. And maybe that's the fear that lies out there. But when you're speaking your truth openly, honestly, and embodying that and knowing that you're taking the tangible steps to fix it, there's a lot of power and control now you have over that personal narrative to be able to move forward in a constructive way about and not have that same type of aloof feeling or that type of uncertainty around making that known to the public. You know?
So from your perspective, what else needs to continue to happen within the educational spaces to best support students, right? Based on what you've experienced in, from elementary school through college, what your friends have experienced, what you've seen peers, other people within your life go through, what else needs to happen? What do administrators need to do? Like if they're listening in, right? What are some things that they need to start doing to best support their mental health of their students?
Yeah, I think it's it kind of leans to about, I've been thinking about this a lot lately, it's sustainable processes. And we think about sustainability, we often think about, the environment, we think about maybe food processes and how but it's always kind of in the environment. But what about personal sustainability processes? What about creating ways in which, understanding, okay, is it logical? Is it proper for the mental health of my student, perhaps for me to assign them 7 hours of homework every night, for this semester, or 7 hours of homework over the course of the year? Is that something that's feasible?
Right.
Or am I able to make this more efficient, break it down to a way in which maybe instead of 7 hours of homework, it's 3.5 hours.
Right.
They're still going to have to work hard. That's not saying you don't work hard.
Right.
But what is a sustainable way for us to be able to maintain? Because at the end of the day, it's all a marathon too, and we're going to have to be able to maintain the same standard, the same pace for months on months, especially when you're building something. It's going to take months, years, 10 years plus, whatever the case is, and you got to find sustainable means in your life and, for you to be able to operate in a way in which these processes can be of longevity.
Yeah.
So for an administrator standpoint, it's about, okay, am I designing my curriculums? Am I designing my classroom structures and my teachings to my students in a way in which is sustainable to them,
right,
in a way in which they can be optimally engaged in the literatures, in the curriculums, in what I'm trying to teach them for that moment, and then give them the ability to rest, recover, just like any other athlete, kind of thinking about as an athlete, give them the time for their brain to rest, recover, and be prepared for the next push of 3, whatever the case may be for that, and creating sustainable ways for them to learn and be educated in the classroom, both when they're inside or wherever the classroom may be. So I think really educators thinking about their curriculums and how is this a sustainable process from a mental health standpoint, or am I overburdening my students so much that they're just going to be burnt out by week 3 of the semester? Meanwhile, we got 3 months left in the semester. They're going to be checked out. They're not really getting anything out of this. At that point, they're just trying to survive. They're in their brain has entered total survival mode versus curiosity and versus optimal learning phases that their brain can activate. They've moved from that place to just, I'm just trying to survive this course. I'm just trying to get through. I'm just trying to get by.
If they even make it, or if some of them drop out the class, some of them drop out of school. Right, 64% of students that drop out of school is due to mental health reasons.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, as a student, as an educator, as a curriculum builder, as an administrator, am I building sustainable processes for my constituents that allows them to be the best student they can be from the first day of class to the last day of class?
Yeah, I think that sums it up beautifully, right? I was meeting with like a bunch of educators yesterday, and that was a big focus, right? How can they build mental health strategy, skills, questioning, awareness into what they're already doing, right? Instead of having it be in silos or something separate, right? Oh, let's bring in the social work, let's bring in whatever, do something, a workshop or something, and then we're back to square one and they're doing all these other things, right? How can you build it in to what you're already doing for that sustainability purposes, right? And making students aware as to why you're doing those kinds of things so that they can recognize it too. Because it's so heartbreaking, like me seeing 8th graders, 7th graders breaking down because they are just burnt out. And I'm like, you are 13, right?
And that's really not fair.
And I've seen it up to the college students, right? It's just like, it's not fair. It's not fair. And we don't teach them what to do. We just say, figure it out. Oh, you have a lot of homework? That sucks. Figure it out. And they're figuring it out in my office in tears.
Exactly. Exactly.
So it's how are we really taking the time to be intentional of, as you're saying, building it into the curriculums, because we have to teach them these things. That's why it's like we're teaching them everything else. Why are we not teaching all students this kind of stuff, right? How are we not teaching them balance? How are we not teaching them self-care practices? How are we not teaching them the importance of checking in with themselves, right? And how to check in with others. It all has to be taught. We don't we're not born with it, right? It has to be taught. And I think the way our society is set up doesn't make it so easy, but we can start making those shifts and start making those changes.
No, you're 100% right. And sometimes too, it's about like understanding, like, this might be a push period. So, there might be a moment where it's sustainable. And then there might be a period where, okay, we got to get after for, 7 hours, or the case may be, plus a night with homework. Let's put that in there. Let's have it labeled out and say big push period right here. So your students even have the time to prepare mental preparation to say, okay, I'm going to go through a big period right now. I remember that's what they used to do for some of the labeling in the football, right? And for a training camp, whatever, we would have practice, but you would know like 3 days before, okay, I have a 2-a-day coming up. You know what I mean? Or
Right.
I got a big day coming up in terms of field work.
Yeah.
I got to get done. So I'm preparing for that physical, a physical day that I'm going to have that's going to be exhausting. But then also maybe if you have that push period labeled in your curriculum, then prior to, you reduce it down. You take maybe it's 3.5 hours. You reduce your students down for that week to an hour, 2 hours worth of work, because the next couple of weeks they're going to be doing 7 push period hours of work and stuff like that.
Right.
And that's applicable to sports. That's applicable to the classroom. That's applicable to companies.
Right.
Not burning out your workers, not burning out your staff, not burning out your constituents. Any type of organizational structure.
Right.
How are we building sustainable processes that give your constituents the opportunity to be the best they can be from the first day to the last day?
Yeah. What advice do you have for students? If there's a student listening in and they want to know more about mental health, or they feel like maybe they're struggling, they feel alone, what advice do you have for students?
Yeah, man. I would say from a student's perspective that it gets better.
Okay.
That, from a mental health standpoint, I'm kind of thinking about a student who might be thinking through something and might be struggling with something, that it's never as bad as maybe you think it is. And sometimes we create these, and the mind is so powerful in this way. It's powerful in many ways, but it's powerful in the way in which sometimes we unknowingly convince ourselves of certain realities, convince ourselves of certain narratives about ourselves, about the outward perception of ourselves that aren't quite necessarily always on point.
Yeah.
And that's why I think it's so important to speak it. Speak it out. Speak it to others. Speak it to people who love you. Speak it objectively to somebody who knows nothing about you or the situation and give you concrete understanding about where you are and how on meter or off meter you are in terms of what you're thinking. I think sometimes too much is done internally, too much thinking and processing is done internally, and then unfortunately that then exudes itself in ways in which, outbursts, in random, breakdowns, and all of a sudden this monologue, internal monologue, sometimes negative internal monologue, is then brought to truth because of the actions that then represent that internal monologue, but it was never spoken and had the opportunity to be corrected, maybe for where it doesn't align, where maybe that's a misconception or maybe something that's not as accurate as maybe you're building it up to be. So I'm really thinking about a younger student too when I'm talking about this, a high school student, a middle school student, that at the time period, whatever you may be going through or feeling like you're going through, find somebody that you can speak to about it and remember that it always gets better. It's a long, long life. I'm 23 years old.
You're so old, oh my God.
I'm 23 years old, but like I'm nowhere near even getting started. Because the thing is, we have a long existence. It's a long runway. It's a marathon of a life. You have ample time for whatever you're going through right now to recover and fix and build it back. So it's never keeping that perspective of timeline, that I have a long life to live and that I'm so young that no matter even what happens to me at 15, 16, 17, 23, what's that really going to mean when I'm 35, 40, 50.
The sooner you can get help, the better.
Exactly.
And you don't have to wait until you're in crisis to get help.
You don't have to wait. And this conversation not is only applicable to somebody who is in crisis or quote unquote crisis. This conversation is applicable to anybody who's a walking, breathing human being. And kind of what you said, being proactive, being proactive, Jesus. Being proactive about it, and starting to think about, okay, understand, because it's an inevitable part of our existence that we're going to be going through something eventually, Being proactive, by the way, okay, I know at some point I'm going to be faced with some type of anxiety, maybe some type of depression, maybe some type of feelings of loneliness or lack of optimism. What can I build now and understand about myself to be able to pull myself out of that situation brick by brick?
The student once asked me, when's the best time, or when it's time for you to go to therapy? And I said, whenever you feel ready.
Exactly. Yeah, no, that's
whenever you feel ready.
That's really good.
All right, so talk to us about ecoText. Dive in. How'd you guys get started? Where you're at now, and then how can listeners support you? What does support look like, et cetera?
So ecoText was a company founded by a couple gritty and ambitious college students who really wanted to figure out a solution to obtaining the necessary learning materials for their classes. And it really started with our CEO, Joel Kunku, who was an engineering student at the University of New Hampshire, who engineering books, as we know, are so expensive.
Yeah.
And
I don't know that, but I
I mean, but regardless, books are expensive in general.
College books are crazy.
And it was, a means of finding a better solution to getting those books. And through that thread, that unfortunately not uncommon story of having to pay these exuberant prices for their college textbooks. I remember going into the first day from my class. I think I had a Spanish class or so my freshman year. And I walked into the bookstore, excited to get started. Looked to the left, saw that the book cost $300, walked right out because that was something that just was not feasible at all. Yeah. And that's a story that we have across the board in our team, and that really was the motivation for us.
That's how I got my first credit card.
Yeah.
I have never paid off to this day.
Yeah, it's like, why?
It was because I needed to buy college textbooks.
Isn't that crazy that how we're having a conversation that now you're going into, you're an adult, you've been graduated school, you still are carrying I mean, it's gotten bigger, but and bought more things. But yes, it started surrounding because of your college textbooks. I mean, that's really absurd. So that's really how we got started at ecoText and building our company up in that way with that motivation to create a more accessible and democratized process for students to obtain the learning materials they can be, so the educators can be the best they can be in the classroom and the students can be the best they can be in the classroom.
Love it.
Yeah.
So where are you guys at now? You're raising funding, right?
We're in pre-seed mode. We're in pre-seed funding mode. We raised close to $100,000 to date, going after $250,000, and we're in a stage where we're going to market with new technology, this ultimate collaborative learning tool in a way which really brings optimized learning processes to the classroom, really hits on all the ways students are able to best learn, whether it be through in-person lectures, whether it be through speaking to one another right within the margins of the text, whether it be through isolated, whether it be through speaking and talking with their professor late night. All those things are possible through our ecoText platform. And really trying to optimize the learning process and bridge the gap between the teacher and the student in the classroom. So then we have the product, the new technology going to market this fall, and we're excited to kind of bring that to classrooms across the country, which is really fun.
I know, like with all this online learning, I think it's probably the most opportune time to have an online platform.
And it's really, it's been a very unfortunate situation, but it's really changing a lot of things. You see so many things in general. I mean, even with, we think about Black Lives Matter, socially things are changing. But also when you think about the bottom line innovations in the classroom have been no different since probably 1940s. But yet the cost of the price to go to school has only been on an upward trajectory since that time. And really you now see this like Rolexification, as Professor Galloway from NYU likes to call it, is this Rolexification of these universities, where now instead of being public servants, they're more of name brand universities that you're kind of getting that name to be able to go forth with. So, in that way, I think a lot of it is changing because now that tide is changing, both from a student perspective, demanding the fact that I'm not paying these $300 textbook prices anymore, but then also teachers being in a position and universities being in a position now where I have to figure out how to best create and maintain my name brand standard of education if my students are on campus or off campus. It's creating a lot of opportunity for companies like ours to be able to be an aid to these institutional partners and the students and bring those two worlds together to create a holistic learning process.
So how can people support you guys, and where can they find you?
So you can find us at ecoText, ecotext.co, and just peruse through our website, see what we're all about, see the, kind of all the ins and outs and learn more about the company. We are currently in an equity crowdfunding stage. Equity crowdfunding being that the public has the opportunity to buy into our company at a low minimum, as little as $100. They can buy shares in ecoText and help us build our company in a way and really channel, a lot of the funding is going towards optimizing our technology and creating the best platform for the students. You can find that at netcapital.com. That's where our listing is, and I'm sure we'll have some more information there for people to reach that. And again, you can buy into the company for as little as $100 to help support us, and you get shares back in the company. So then now it becomes mutually beneficial. Our growth equals your growth from a monetary standpoint, and then also from just a good deed standpoint, creating a more holistic learning process and really a mission focused company and brand that we are at ecoText, to really optimize the learning process for students across the country. So we're really excited about that. And if there's any professors out there who want to know more about ecoText and know more about what we do, again, you can reach us at www.ecotext.co to learn more, and we'll be right in contact because we look forward to helping you in your classrooms and helping you in your curriculum needs.
Well, thank you so much for being here. I think this was an amazing conversation. As the crux of the business is about student mental health, and it's all been driven by the feedback that I've gotten from students and my work with students. So I thank you for being here, and I'm excited for what's to come for ecoText. And I hope that you guys are able to make it to your $250,000. But also wish you the best as you're entering adulthood.
My
cousin.
It is. It's a daunting. It's kind of crazy to think that I'm an adult now. I guess people are calling me adult. Even I have like teachers that's like, no, call me by my first name. I'm like, that's a little weird. I know. I'm not sure yet. You know what I mean? It's fun though, and it's exciting to be a part of this world of entrepreneurship. Like, I'm sure we all, it's in the blood, so to speak, and be able to build something that not only has the ability to help a lot of people, but do right by yourself in the process. Really holding on to this ideology of conscious capitalism, that building innovations and driven focused businesses that provide value to the world. I think there's a lot of power in that, and I look forward to being a main staple in that for a future to come.
Same.
Yeah.
All right, thanks again.
Yeah, thank you, man. Appreciate you having me.